At its peak, the Aztec Empire controlled central Mexico, commanded tribute from hundreds of cities, and fed the largest urban population in the Western Hemisphere. Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital built on a lake, was larger than any city in Europe at the time. Its markets, temples, and causeways stunned the Spanish soldiers who first saw it. One of them wrote that they did not know whether what they were seeing was real. The men who built and ruled this empire were not distant historical figures. They were calculating, ruthless, and operating inside one of the most sophisticated political systems the ancient Americas ever produced. They commanded armies of tens of thousands. They presided over sacrificial rituals that kept an entire civilization's cosmology intact. And one by one, they died. Some in battle, some by betrayal, some at the hands of strangers who had sailed from a world they had never heard of. These are the deaths of the most legendary Aztec emperors in history. Moctezuma II, the emperor who opened the gates. What Moctezuma did next has puzzled historians for 500 years. Instead of destroying the Spanish force immediately, which his armies were more than capable of doing, he invited them into Tenochtitlan. He housed them in a palace. He gave them gifts. The reasons are still debated. Some historians believe he was playing a long political game, using the Spanish against rival states he wanted to weaken. Others believe he genuinely thought Cortés might be the returning god Quetzalcoatl. Most modern scholars reject the god theory as a Spanish invention. What's certain is this: Cortés eventually placed Moctezuma under house arrest inside his own palace, effectively holding the emperor hostage while maintaining the fiction that he was still ruling freely. For months, the most powerful man in the Aztec world issued decrees at Spanish direction while his own people watched. In June 1520, the Aztec population of Tenochtitlan rose against the Spanish occupiers. Here's where the accounts split completely. Spanish sources claim Moctezuma appeared on a palace balcony to calm his people, was struck by stones thrown by the crowd, and died of his wounds 3 days later. Indigenous sources say something different entirely, that the Spanish killed him themselves, stabbing him when he was no longer useful, and invented the stoning story to avoid blame. Now, he was approximately 53 years old. His body was reportedly thrown into a canal by the Spanish as they fled the city during the Noche Triste, the Night of Sorrows, when the Aztec counterattack nearly destroyed Cortés's force entirely. Whether his own people killed him or the Spanish did, the emperor who had opened the gates of Tenochtitlan to strangers died inside his own palace, abandoned by both sides. Ahuitzotl, the conqueror who drowned. He is also the emperor who presided over the largest single sacrifice in recorded Aztec history. In 1487, to consecrate the expansion of the great temple of Tenochtitlan, Ahuitzotl oversaw a ceremony in which an estimated 20,000 captives were sacrificed over 4 days. 4 lines of prisoners stretched from the temple in 4 directions across the city. Contemporary accounts describe the priests working in shifts. The blood ran down the temple steps in rivers. His death in 1502 was the result of a problem he created himself. Tenochtitlan was built on a lake and had always managed water carefully through a sophisticated system of dikes and aqueducts. Ahuitzotl decided to increase the city's fresh water supply by diverting a new spring into the system. His engineers warned him the flow was too powerful to control. He ignored them. The resulting flood inundated large sections of Tenochtitlan. Ahuitzotl was reportedly struck on the head by a wooden beam while escaping through a low doorway during the flooding. He never recovered. Some accounts say the head injury killed him directly. Others say he was already in poor health from the flood's aftermath when he died. He was approximately 40 years old. The man who had sacrificed 20,000 people at a temple dedication died because he ignored his own engineers about a water pipe. His nephew Moctezuma II succeeded him and inherited the most powerful empire in the Americas, 8 years before the Spanish arrived. Tizoc, poisoned by his own court. Tizoc became the 7th Aztec emperor in 1481 and was immediately a disappointment. His first military campaign, a required demonstration of conquest for a new emperor, ended in near disaster. He attacked the city of Metztitlan with a large army and returned with only 40 captives. 40. Previous emperors had returned with thousands. The Aztec warrior class considered it a humiliation. His reign never recovered from that first campaign. He managed some construction projects, including work on the Great Temple of Tenochtitlan, but his military record remained weak. For the Aztec state, which depended on constant conquest to supply both tribute and sacrificial captives to keep the cosmological system functioning, a militarily ineffective emperor was not just a political problem. He was an existential one. Here's where it gets direct. After 5 years of inadequate rule, Tizoc died in 1486. The official cause was illness. What the historical record strongly suggests, and what several sources state plainly, is that he was poisoned by members of his own noble council who had decided he needed to be replaced. The identity of the poisoners was never officially established, and no one was punished. His brother Ahuitzotl succeeded him almost immediately and launched the aggressive military expansion the empire had been waiting for. Tizoc was approximately 35 years old. He ruled for 5 years and left almost no positive legacy. His death was the Aztec court's solution to a problem their political system had no other mechanism to fix. The empire needed a conqueror. He wasn't one. So they removed him and found one who was. Itzcoatl, the emperor who burned history. Itzcoatl was the 4th Aztec emperor and the man who, more than anyone else, created the Aztec Empire as it was known at its peak. Before him, the Aztecs were a tributary state paying tribute to the Tepanec Empire. In 1428, Itzcoatl formed a military alliance with 2 neighbouring city-states, the Triple Alliance, and destroyed the Tepanec Empire in a war that lasted 2 years. The Aztecs went from subjugated state to dominant power in a single campaign. What Itzcoatl did immediately after his victory is one of the most extraordinary acts of political manipulation in ancient American history. He ordered the existing historical records of the Aztec people burned, all of them. The painted manuscripts that recorded Aztec history, lineage, and origin stories were destroyed on his command. He then commissioned new histories, ones that repositioned the Aztecs as a chosen people destined to rule, with a divine mandate that the old records had not contained. He understood something that very few rulers in any civilization have acted on so completely. Controlling the past is the most effective way to control the present. Itzcoatl died in 1440 after a reign of 13 years. The cause was natural: old age and illness. He was approximately 70 years old, which was ancient by Aztec standards. He died in his palace in Tenochtitlan, having transformed his people from a subject state into the dominant power in central Mexico. No dramatic death, no betrayal, no battlefield end. The man who built the empire and burned its history died quietly in the city he had built. What he created outlasted him by nearly a century before the Spanish destroyed it, along with most of the replacement histories he had commissioned. Cuitlahuac, 90 days. Cuitlahuac was Moctezuma II's brother and everything Moctezuma was not. Where Moctezuma had negotiated, accommodated, and ultimately been held hostage in his own palace, Cuitlahuac organized resistance. When the Aztec population rose against the Spanish in June 1520, it was Cuitlahuac who coordinated the military response that drove Cortés and his forces out of Tenochtitlan in a single night. The Noche Triste, the Night of Sorrows, was one of the worst military defeats the Spanish suffered in the entire conquest of the Americas. Cortés lost more than half his men, most of his horses, and virtually all of the treasure he had accumulated. The causeway leading out of the city became a killing ground. Spanish soldiers weighted down with stolen gold drowned in the lake trying to escape. Cuitlahuac's forces killed hundreds of them before dawn. He became emperor in the immediate aftermath of Moctezuma's death, inheriting an empire that had just expelled its invaders. He had every reason to believe the threat was over. Here's what he could not have known. The Spanish soldiers who retreated from Tenochtitlan carried something invisible with them: smallpox. The disease had no name in the Aztec world because it had never existed there. It spread through the population of Tenochtitlan with a speed and lethality that no Aztec physician had any framework to understand or treat. Cuitlahuac, the emperor who had driven out the Spanish, died of smallpox approximately 80 days after taking the throne. 80 days. He never saw Cortés return. He never had time to fortify the city, rebuild the army, or prepare for the siege that would destroy everything he had just defended. He was approximately 45 years old. The man who won the greatest battle against the Spanish was killed by a disease they left behind. Cortés returned the following year and found a city already half dead from plague. The siege that followed lasted 75 days. Tenochtitlan fell in August 1521. Cuauhtémoc, the last emperor. Cuauhtémoc became the last emperor of the Aztec Empire at approximately 25 years old, in the middle of a siege. Tenochtitlan was already surrounded. Smallpox had already killed a significant portion of the population, including his predecessor. Cortés had returned with a rebuilt Spanish force, thousands of indigenous allies who had been waiting for a chance to break free of Aztec domination, and a fleet of small warships to control the lake. Cuauhtémoc had a city full of dying people and nowhere to go. He fought anyway. The siege of Tenochtitlan lasted 75 days. Cuauhtémoc organized the defense street by street, pulling back as sections of the city fell, refusing every offer of surrender. The population starved. The bodies of the dead from smallpox and battle filled the canals. Contemporary accounts describe the smell of Tenochtitlan during the final weeks as something that could be detected miles away. On August 13th, 1521, Cuauhtémoc attempted to escape the fallen city by canoe with his family and remaining nobles. Spanish brigantines intercepted him on the lake. He was captured. When they brought him before Cortés, Cuauhtémoc reportedly pointed to the dagger at Cortés's belt and said, "I have done everything I could to defend my city. Do with me what you will." Cortés did not kill him. He kept him alive as a political tool, a captive emperor whose existence gave the conquest an air of legitimate transfer of power. 2 years later, in 1523, Cortés decided that Cuauhtémoc might be organizing a rebellion and needed to be persuaded to reveal where the Aztec treasury was hidden. He had Cuauhtémoc's feet oiled and held over an open fire. The torture lasted until Cuauhtémoc reportedly said, "Do you think I am lying on a bed of roses?" Cortés eventually stopped. No treasury was found. No rebellion was proven. In 1525, Cortés brought Cuauhtémoc on a military expedition to Honduras. On February 26, 1525, on the basis of an alleged conspiracy that was never clearly established, Cortés had Cuauhtémoc hanged from a saber tree in the jungle. He was approximately 29 years old. The last emperor of the Aztec Empire was tortured for information that may not have existed, then hanged in a jungle 4 years after his city fell, far from the lake where Tenochtitlan had stood. His exact burial place has never been found. The city the Aztecs built on the water, the city that stunned the Spanish soldiers who first saw it, now lies beneath Mexico City, buried under 5 centuries of a civilization built on top of it. 6 emperors across 2 centuries of the most sophisticated empire in the ancient Americas. Moctezuma II, held hostage in his own palace, killed by either his own people or his captors, the truth buried with him. Ahuitzotl, the greatest Aztec conqueror, killed by a flood he caused himself. Tizoc, poisoned by his own court for being insufficiently brutal. Itzcoatl, the man who built the empire and burned its history, died quietly in the city he made. Cuitlahuac drove out the Spanish, then died of the disease they left behind. Cuauhtémoc, tortured for a treasury that may not have existed, hanged in a jungle at 29. An empire that took 2 centuries to build, destroyed in 2 years by 500 soldiers and a disease no one in the Americas had ever seen. If you want to know how the next set of legendary rulers fell, subscribe. The next video is already coming.